Hello, this is Dave Jones with Storm Center Communications and GeoCollaborate. This is an update on Hurricane Ian. Ian is about to make landfall on the South Carolina coastline as a Category 1 hurricane. If you didn't see the last update, we had Tropical Storm Ian that was coming off the Florida coast, but it quickly re-intensified into a hurricane because there's so much structure to this storm. It just needed a little bit of warm water from the Gulf Stream, and it intensified to 75 miles per hour, and now it is 85 miles per hour around the core of the storm. The thing that's been most impressive with Ian, and you can see it on the satellite imagery there, look at the outflow from those clouds going all the way through eastern Tennessee and eastern Kentucky, through West Virginia and Pennsylvania, up to New York. That shows some excellent exhaust or evacuation of the air at the top of the hurricane. Plus, Ian is interacting with a frontal boundary, a trough of low pressure, that's also starting to transition it to an extratropical storm. That's what's going to happen after it makes landfall. It's going to decrease in wind intensity rather quickly once it makes landfall. However, it will still be windy, and it will still produce a lot of rain. There's a lot of flash flood watches. There's also a lot going on along the coastline. It does look impressive from satellite imagery, though. So Hurricane Ian is accelerating towards the South Carolina coast as of 11 a.m., the National Hurricane Center's update. Also, there's life-threatening storm surge and damaging winds that will be arriving soon. There is a core to the hurricane for where the heaviest winds are. Let me switch over to GeoCollaborate and show you that. You can see what's going on here. Let me turn the arrow on. You can see this is the core of the strong winds right in here. And so that means as the hurricane makes landfall, it's going to be Charleston to Myrtle Beach is going to get the most wind out of this system. There have been wind gusts over 87 miles per hour, and also a 4 to 7 foot storm surge is expected in this area right in here between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, up to the North Carolina, South Carolina border, but right to the right of the center. Now you can see the core of the winds is this area. These are storm force winds, which are about 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then tropical storm force winds extend out, look at this, more than 240 miles from the center. So folks on the Outer Banks of North Carolina are feeling not only the wind, but perhaps tropical storm force wind gusts, even up to 40 or 50 miles per hour at times. That's why there are these advisories. Even up to the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay, a storm warning is in effect for potential wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour. That's because of the pressure gradient. There is a strong high pressure system located up to the north, and that combined with a strong low pressure making landfall here in the form of Hurricane Ian really tightens that pressure gradient. And when that happens, it's windy and breezy across a large area. That's why in Georgia right here, you see this. This is a wind advisory. Wind advisories are in effect here in Georgia for today, and that is because being on the backside of the hurricane. It's a large wind field and that high pressure system there. The reason you see these green states here, Tennessee and also Virginia and North Carolina is also green, but it's overshadowed by the flood watches and all the advisories there, including wind advisories. Those folks out in Nashville are going to be very windy too. There could be some tree limbs and trees down because of these high winds in the mountainous areas as well. But these states are green because they indicate that governors have issued declarations and waivers, so utility trucks and other transportation vehicles can make it through those states that are overweight. Normally, it's a safety issue to have heavy trucks traveling, but the folks in Florida really need bottled water. They need generators. They need all sorts of things. So governors issue these waivers to allow those vehicles to pass through their states without getting ticketed or fined. And then that extends all the way down into Florida, where there's a state of emergency there. The governor of Georgia has declared a state of emergency. Also, South Carolina has declared a state of emergency. And the declaration from North Carolina is allowing them to be a pass-through state, but also watching for flooding as well. I believe their EOC is activated in North Carolina. So this is what's happening. You can see the path of Ian. I'll show you where it's come across Florida here. We all know the damage there. We're going to be doing a little bit of damage assessment updates later. But this is the path that it took. It converted or downgraded to a tropical storm right before it passed over Cape Kennedy, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where they were about to launch Artemis, but they were able to wheel it back. It's called a rollback into the vehicle assembly building to keep it safe. So that is good. They'll be pursuing launch times further into the future, of course. And then it became a hurricane once again. The Gulf Stream is out here, and that's really something that adds fuel to the storm. And it did get its act together to become a hurricane. It's not incredibly impressive on satellite imagery, but it certainly is large. That's for sure. And that's we'll look at that just one more time again, as it really wraps itself up there. Once it makes landfall in the Carolinas there in South Carolina, expecting a 4 to 7 foot storm surge. That is underway right now. There's flooding in Charleston. There's flooding in Myrtle Beach. There's flooding in Garden City. There's flooding on Folly Island, as a matter of fact. And it's got a wide wind field, so there's going to be some damage assessment that's needed there. Hopefully people moved away from the coastline. If you know that you're going to be impacted by a 4 to 7 foot storm surge, that's something to move away from. So critical infrastructure that'll be impacted here in South Carolina include utilities, transportation. Transportation will be impacted for roads, trees down, flooding, storm surge could also impact transportation infrastructure. Also, the electrical substations, if any of them are near rivers that are susceptible to 4 to 7 foot storm surge, they will be impacted. Sometimes the utility companies turn those off, de-energize them ahead of a storm so they can save on some of the damage and get power back up a little bit faster. But when salt water intrudes, it creates a lot of damage to vehicles as well. So you can see from GeoCollaborate, I'll go back here to the dashboard and show you the storm. The cone is very, very small. Why is it very small? It's small because this is a level of certainty within the Hurricane Center's forecast. So the Hurricane Center is very confident that the center of the storm is going to move along this area and then dissipate in the mountains of Virginia. This could cause really devastating flooding along the Blue Ridge as well. So we're going to be watching that very closely because even though the Hurricane Center might downgrade it to a depression, that just means that the wind speed has gone below tropical storm force. It doesn't mean that there's a lack of moisture with this hurricane or this tropical storm or this tropical depression. We've had many storms produce catastrophic flooding in the Blue Ridge, southwestern Virginia, central Virginia, that have just been depressions or just been coming off of tropical storm status. And if I turn on, let me turn on the weather radar just so you can see how much rain is falling as well. So let me turn that on here. So while that's coming on, I'm going to turn off all of the hurricane and tropical storm related layers just so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to turn off the all the weather warnings from the Weather Service just so we can focus in on the radar. And I'm going to turn off all of the states and the declarations of emergency. So this is what we have. We have Hurricane Ian. You can see the swirl right here. That's the center of the storm making landfall. I think it's probably going to be around Myrtle Beach. However, it's a large storm. So I would say that the landfall is between Charleston and Myrtle Beach or even wider. Using just one point as the center point for landfall, I think, is a little bit misleading for the public. Because they can see this big, large storm here, and to have it make landfall in one town just doesn't really make too much sense to me. However, you can see the strong winds or the strong rain, heavy rainfall here on the northwestern eye wall of Ian. And you can see here, this is in North Charleston, Mount Pleasant. They're getting very heavy rainfall, 3 to 4 inches of rain per hour is falling here. So we're looking at very, very heavy flooding going on right here. And you can see on the eastern edge, the rain is not that bad. So those folks in Myrtle Beach are getting rain and gusty winds. They'll get probably more winds than they will rain out of this, because you see on the eastern edge, there's even dry air working its way in. But, and this has been very consistent with Ian as it moved across Florida, to the north and northwest of the center, that's this area here, to the north and northwest of the center is where the flooding rains are happening right now. So as this storm moves in, you can expect this area of flooding rain to move to the north here. So along areas just east of Columbia, I think Columbia, you'll be right on the borderline there of flooding rains. There's some spiral bands here that are producing also heavy rain, but they're moving rather quickly. But there could be other heavy rain showers that move along this area. Notice we talked yesterday about the fine line between rain falling in Georgia and in South Carolina. Well, here it is manifesting itself right now in Hurricane Ian. Look how close the rain came to the line of Georgia. So Georgia, congratulations, you're out of the heavy rainfall and flooding potential from here on out for Hurricane Ian, but you're still going to have gusty winds that could cause tree limbs to come down. So you want to pay attention. If you have any weak trees, pay attention to those and move away from them, move your cars away from them. As this system moves inland and through North Carolina, this area of heavy rain is going to be one to watch. So that could be coming through Charlotte a little bit later into Winston-Salem and Greensboro as the storm moves up this way. If you're on the north and west side of the center of the storm, that is where you can expect flooding rains. Now, a little bit further to the north in North Carolina, these are heavy rains as well. They're going to be moving slowly. That looks like it's raining in Washington and Annapolis and Maryland. However, it's not. It's evaporating before it hits the ground. High pressure to the north is really evaporating a lot of that rain currently. But the rain will come, and it will be impressive at times in its intensity. So that's it for this update for Hurricane Ian. We have a Category 1 hurricane that's about to making landfall right now in South Carolina, the central coastline of South Carolina. Storm surges from 4 to 7 feet. And let me just turn on that storm surge area one more time so you can see how far that extends. So here's the peak storm surge area. Look at that. It's all the way from coastal Georgia, right at the Savannah River, stops at the Savannah River, then north. The wind is actually blowing offshore in Savannah now, so it's actually doing a blowout of the Savannah River. So levels are probably pretty low there right now. But areas through North Carolina, the entire coastline of South Carolina, all the way up to Duck, that is where this storm surge is likely to happen, and to be about 3 to 4 feet. I believe that's what that is. Let me just get that area up here to make that very accurate. 2 to 4 feet is the storm surge from Cape Fear to Duck in North Carolina. And then in Pamlico Sound, we're looking at a 2 to 4 foot storm surge as well. That could be very dangerous. That's higher than normally dry ground, 2 to 4 feet. So it's likely to impact structures. And also all the structures, houses that are on the Outer Banks of North Carolina are once again being pounded. Route 12 usually gets covered with sand from high tides and storm surge. So look for Route 12 to perhaps be closed once again. Well, that's it for this update. I'm Dave Jones with Storm Center Communications and GeoCollaborate. Try to have yourself a good day. We have a lot of people responding to the catastrophe in Florida through landfall all the way through central Florida, and then now responding as well to the landfall of Ian in the Carolinas. So we'll keep you updated. Next update will be later this afternoon, probably around 6 or 7 o'clock, unless conditions warrant.